The rain began just after dusk, needling the glass of the 27th floor until the boardroom looked submerged. Someone dimmed the lights to make the slides easier to read, but the dimness only sharpened the tension, as if the company's problems prefer to be half seen. Around the long oak table sat a dozen people with titles that could open any door in the city. No one spoke. Red numbers glowed on the screens, like coals cooling too fast to save. At the head of the table, Charles Whitaker, impeccable suit, silvering hair, pen clamped his fist, looked like a man holding a door against a storm. He had led turnarounds before. He had stared at uglier spreadsheets and walked out with a plan. But this time was different. The flagship product was failing. The new line was late. A cheaper rival had trained customers to expect simple, dependable tools, and Whitaker's prize complexity had started to feel like clutter. "We have 8 weeks," Charles said, finally breaking the quiet. No slogans. Specifics. Where do we cut? What do we ship? How do we buy time? Finance spoke about covenants and runway. Marketing floated a rebrand and a new tagline that sounded expensive and thin. Operations warned about supply contracts and a union calendar that refused to bend. Legal translated risk into sentences so long they became fog. The room felt like a hospital where everyone talked about forms because no one wanted to say the word code. The door swung open. A man in faded blue coveralls stepped in, pushing a yellow bin lined with clear bags. He froze, eyes wide, the way a person freezes when they've walked into the wrong church. His name tag read Daniel. He had come to empty the trash, the way he had done every night for a decade. He backed toward the hall. "Sorry," he murmured. "I can come back." Charles didn't so much speak as point. "Closed meeting." A vice president flicked a hand. The impatient swap for a mosquito that hasn't yet bitten. "Out!" Daniel nodded, caught the edge of the bin with his boot, and a slim folder slid from his back pocket. It hit the carpet, burst open, and scattered pages under expensive shoes. Handwritten charts, vendor lists, flow diagrams in pencil. An executive bent to flick a page free from his soul and frowned. "What is this?" he asked. Before Daniel could drop to his knees to gather them, Charles took the sheet, ready to hand it back without looking. Then he saw the numbers. They weren't the airy gradients consultants used to lull a room. They were harsh and unadorned. 3 different prices paid to the same supplier for the same part. Warranty spikes mapped by month and firmware version. A heat sink that only failed when paired with particular board revision. A quiet fire that had smoldered for 6 quarters. "Where did you get this?" Charles asked. It wasn't curiosity. It was suspicion edged with the hope a drowning man feels when he sees a shape on the water. Daniel swallowed. He could pretend. He could say the papers weren't his. Instead, he made a choice. "From me," he said softly. "I clean the floors outside payroll. I pick up drafts outside procurement. I hear things when people think the room is empty." I started making notes. I thought if I could see the leaks, maybe they could be plugged. A consultant laughed. "You ran analysis from a mop closet?" Heads tilted with him. Daniel didn't look their way. He looked at the man whose name was on the building. "You asked for specifics," he said. "I have them. 5 minutes. If I waste them, I'll never bring up again." The room waited for Charles to re-establish the border between who talked and who listened. Instead, Charles slid the page to the middle of the table. 5 minutes, he said. "Show me where the money is hiding." Daniel's hands trembled as he connected a thumb drive. The first slide came up. It looked like it had been built at a kitchen table because it had a gray logo, a blunt title, "How We Stop Bleeding," and beneath it, 3 sentences. He started small because small multiplied is big. "We pay 3 different prices to the same injection molding supplier because 3 divisions negotiated separately and never shared their ladders," he said, tapping a simple table. "Standardize and save 7% on housings." He flipped. "This heat sink fails under load, but only when paired with firmware 2.4. Our warranty data looks random because the reporting tool groups by serial, not by version. Swap the sink to the ceramic composite used in the Pro line. Costs up 85 cents per unit. Returns down $12.98. We save money and stop burning our brand. He showed a map he had drawn with a ruler and a child's marker at 2 in the morning. Kidding happens a day late, he said. Every Thursday, operators start their shift without parts, burn hour waiting, then run hot to catch up. Stage kits the night before. We ship 20% more without overtime. He flipped again. Dev and support don't share telemetry. We release quarterly. Issues peak in week 5. Build a hotline and a simple tool that aggregates field data. Fix what's real, not what's loud. Finally, he moved to the part of the deck that had kept him awake for months. He reached into the yellow bin, into a hidden compartment, and lifted 2 housings that looked nearly identical. He clicked off their shells with a pocket tool. Inside, one was simple and sturdy. The other was modular and expandable. We keep jamming 2 philosophies into one product, he said. It makes neither sing. Ship a simple, durable model for first-time buyers. Ship a modular pro model for loyalists who want to grow. We already build both halves. We just glue them together in a way that confuses everyone. Silence gathered around the table. Rain drummed the glass with a steadier rhythm now, like a metronome. "Who are you?" Charles asked, not because he hadn't read the name tag, but because identity is more than letters. "Daniel Ortiz," he said. "Night crew, 4 to midnight." Charles let the room breathe for 2 long beats. He looked at his executives. "Why haven't I heard this from any of you?" No one spoke. Someone's phone buzzed and was silenced. Charles turned back to Daniel. "Come back tomorrow at 3. Full walkthrough, full assumptions, full math. The operating committee will be here." Daniel nodded. His heart pounded so hard he felt in his gums. He gathered his pages, pushed the bin into the hall, and the door closed behind him with a soft click that sounded like a hinge turning on a new life. He did not sleep. He brewed coffee at midnight and printed at 2. He tested his sentences against the thin apartment air while his daughter slept in the next room. School books scattered across the table. He taped a piece of paper above the sink that said, "Say it plain." He ironed the only button-down he owned and set it on the chair. At dawn, he touched the plastic stars his daughter had stuck to the window. "So you don't forget to look up," she had said when she pressed him there last winter. He hadn't. He wouldn't. Daniel's apartment was a second-floor walk-up over a nail salon and a bodega that sold bananas with brown freckles, but the sweetest taste in the city. He had been both mother and father since Elena left 2 years earlier, a separation that began as a budget argument and ended with both of them too tired to pretend they could love on fumes alone. Sophia, 12, had her mother's eyes and Daniel's curiosity. She had built a model of the solar system out of old ping-pong balls and fishing line and hung it from the ceiling, so it swayed when the heater kicked on. "You're nervous," Sophia said at breakfast, studying his face the way children study weather. "You only stir your coffee when you're thinking." "Big day," he admitted. "Might be nothing. Might be everything." She reached up and tapped the paper above the sink. "Say it plain. You tell me to say what I mean in class," she said. "Do the same at work." At 3 o'clock exactly, the operating committee filed into the boardroom. Finance, legal, product, operations, HR, 3 board members who wanted to see for themselves, and Charles with his sleeves rolled one turn. Daniel stood beside the screen, palms damp, tie a little crooked because Sophia had done the knot and insisted it made him look like a serious person who still smiles. He began at the bottom, where money hides in lint and in attention. He did not accuse. He did not showboat. He invited instead of indicted. Finance leaned forward. Legal asked for documentation, and got it. Operations tested assumptions, and found substance they could grip. He showed the 2 split models again. A board member who hadn't smiled in months touched the pro unit, as if it were a living thing. "How soon?" she asked. "If we freeze feature creep and retool one line, 9 weeks for the simple model," Daniel said. "We already have the parts. The pro system follows next quarter with modular upgrades." Questions came like rain, then like hail. Pricing? Channels? Brand narrative? Support infrastructure? Daniel answered with drafts, not decrees, and left clean spaces for the experts to fill. Pride loosened its hold on the room. Curiosity took its place. Where a day earlier everyone had argued to defend what they owned, now they argued to build what they could share. During a short break, Charles motioned Daniel into his office, a glass box that looked down on the atrium like a control tower. Photos lined one wall. A ribbon cutting at the first factory. A young Charles beside a man with the same eyes, his father. "Where did you learn to think like this?" Charles asked, leaning on the desk as if he could not bring himself to sit. "A garage," Daniel said. "A mop closet. Kitchen tables. And a lot of nights listening when people assumed I couldn't hear." Charles rubbed his jaw. "We pay people more than I made my first 5 years to see what you saw from a utility cart. Maybe they were staring too close at their slides to notice the floor," Daniel said. He flushed as he said it, then added, "Sorry, that sounded." "True," Charles said. He straightened. "For 3 months, you're seconded to product strategy. Small team. Direct line to me. We cover your shift. After that, the results decide titles." Daniel nodded, not trusting his voice. In the hallway, Darius the night guard gave him a subtle fist bump. "You look taller," Darius said. "Must be the tie." They built the team from the willing. A supply chain analyst named Priya, who had been ignored since she questioned a suspicious invoice. A junior designer, Miles, with a sketchbook full of ideas his boss never opened. A support rep, Tasha, who could recite the top 20 complaints in her sleep and wish someone would stay awake long enough to fix them. They commandeered an unused conference room and taped their roadmap to the wall. They nicknamed it the kitchen because, as Priya said, it's where the real work gets cooked. Daniel drew 2 circles on the whiteboard and labeled them pretty and true. "Live in the overlap," he said. "If it's pretty but not true, it's propaganda. If it's true but not pretty, no one will hear it. We make both." They went to see customers instead of sending surveys. In a strip mall in Akron, a woman who ran a repair shop said, "I love your stuff until it breaks. Then I can't get parts for 6 weeks. I can't tell a contractor to wait. So I send them to your competitor." In Phoenix, a project manager told them, "Last spring's update bricked our units for a week. You mailed us coffee cards. I don't need caffeine. I need confidence." In Baton Rouge, a foreman held up a crack housing, "Dropped this from shoulder height on a job site, and it's done. Your rivals keeps going." They brought the stories back to the kitchen and wrote them on the wall. They stopped arguing about theoretical personas and started building for glory on line 2 and Armand in the field, an Yvette who ran a team of 6 and had a budget that had to last past March. They installed a literal hotline between support and dev and called it Vent because it kept heat from building up in the closet. They built a dashboard that showed failure rates by part and firmware version and opened it to anyone who could fix what it named. Resistance hardened in the corners. A vice president whose bonus was tied to the old line whispered that Moponomics would tank the quarter. A supplier who enjoyed fat margins invited Whitaker's biggest rival to dinner. A consultant circulated a memo listing 57 ways a plan could fail and not one way it might work. Priya slid the memo onto the kitchen table and said, "We just got 57 tests. Let's pass them." Week 5, the first pilot units rolled off a retooled line. Daniel stood with Gloria at 6 in the morning and watched the kitting team stage parts the night before for the first time. "Feels like cheating," Gloria joked. "Like we found an extra hour on the couch." Productivity climbed. Quality did too. The Warney curve, graffitied on the wall like a sorcerer's snake, started to flatten in the right places. Then the competitor announced a surprise price cut and a flashy software trick that made half the tech press swoon. The board flinched. A director called Charles and pleaded, "Hit pause. If we ship into this moment, we'll look desperate." Charles looked at Daniel across the table and asked the only question that mattered. "Do we keep going?" Daniel thought of Sophia's consolations and the woman in Akron who could not wait 6 weeks for parts. "We ship what is real," he said. "One model that doesn't break. One that grows with you. We stand on that, not on noise. Let the people decide." The board split. A vote would be held Monday. Over the weekend, Charles paced his kitchen and counted the ceiling beams. Daniel helped Sophia finish a paper on Saturn's rings, looked up and told her they were mostly ice and dust, and did not check his phone for an hour, which felt like an achievement equal to retooling a line. Monday morning, the fire alarm screamed. Smoke curled from a server closet on 12. The building emptied into rain. Darius took roll with a clipboard like a homeroom teacher and made jokes that kept fear from widening. A facilities tech sprinted toward the closet with a red canister and a curse for anyone who had ignored the maintenance ticket. Daniel followed. He knew the rack in that closet. It held the telemetry server for Vent, the machine that finally listened to customers instead of waiting for a quarterly report to translate their pain into passive voice. They pulled the panel, cleared the heat, and saved the server. The alarm bought the board a delay and gave Daniel a metaphor. When they reconvened, he told them about the closet. "We treated our customers like that," he said. "We let heat build until smoke forced us outside. The fix isn't a new logo. It's ventilation. We opened the door. Don't close it now." The vote passed by one. Marketing shot the launch video in a garage with a single work light and a product in a puddle. The voiceover: "This is a tool you use when the lights go out." The simple model shipped with a card signed by someone on the line. The Pro model shipped with a QR code linking to the 8 most common upgrades and a forum moderated by engineers, not interns. Sales were slow for 12 days. On day 13, a video from a construction site in Louisiana went viral. Rain slashing sideways, an old unit dead on a tailgate. The simple model finishing the pour. "Not fancy," the foreman shouted into wind, but didn't quit. Orders doubled, then they tripled. Retailers called asking for inventory. Gloria taught temps how to stage kits without losing an hour at the start of shift. The ops dashboard line tilted up like a sunrise. Charles held an all hands in the atrium, but he didn't stand on the balcony above them. He stood among them, mic in hand, tie loosened, sleeves rolled. "We forgot who we were," he said. "We measured the wrong things and believed our own slides. You reminded us that businesses exist to solve real problems for real people. I'm proud of this company. I'm proud of you." He looked toward the back. "And I'm grateful to the man who tapped me on the shoulder with a better way." Hundreds of heads turned. Daniel lifted a hand, awkward and grateful. Sophia squeezed his fingers and whispered, "They mean you." He let himself hear it. For the first time in years, he believed applause could be honest. The quarter closed in the green, not by a hair, but by a margin that suggested habit was forming. Analysts who had prepared eulogies wrote about disciplined simplicity. A magazine asked to photograph Charles and Daniel for a cover story titled The Turnaround. Charles tried to redirect the spotlight to the line team. The editor insisted on faces that fit on a cover. Inside, though, a 2-page spread showed Gloria with grease on her cheek and Priya pointing at a messy whiteboard. Tasha cut the ribbon on the forum redesign that made answers easier to find than excuses. Not everyone celebrated. The vice president who had undermined the plan left for a startup and told friend Whitaker had lost its edge. The supplier cut their margins and promised to partner. The internal chat thread where Moponomics jokes had flourished went quiet. People don't mock what works unless they are bored, and no one at Whitaker had time to be bored. In December, the boardroom looked different because the faces inside it did. Daniel sat at the table, not along the wall, as head of a small innovation unit with a tiny budget and a mandate that made his hands shake. Charles handed him a pen. "Sign the charter," he said. "Make pretty and true overlap as often as possible." Daniel signed. The pen fell heavy with the memory of mops and late nights and a folder that had once exploded onto the same carpet. After the meeting, Charles lingered by the photo of the old factory. "My father taught me to build," he said. "Somewhere along the way I confused building with defending. You reminded me that sometimes you save a house by opening a new door." Daniel glanced at the picture of men with rolled sleeves and lunch pails. "My father cleaned hospital floors," he said. "He used to tell me, if the floor is clean, people trust everything else. I think about that every time we ship. Clean first, then shine." Spring came. The simple model became a staple in tool belts and trunks. The modular system earned a following among loyalists who had waited for someone to treat them like partners. Vent, once a sketch on a wall, became a real team with a schedule and the authority to refuse launches that hadn't earned confidence. A rival CEO told a reporter that Whitaker had become annoyingly competent. It was the nicest insult Daniel had ever received. On a Tuesday afternoon, Daniel returned to the kitchen and found Sophia drawing constellations above the roadmap again, connecting dots between projects with blue thread. "So you don't forget to look up," she said. "Again." He laughed and promised he wouldn't. That night, they ate takeout dumplings on the living room floor and watched a documentary about bridges. "See," Sophia said, "mouthful, all a bridge is a promise that you'll meet me in the middle." The following quarter, Charles asked Daniel to present the roadmap to the board without an introduction. "You carried this," he said. "Carry it." Daniel told the story numbers could not. Gloria's donuts after the kidding change. Tasha's relief when Vent fixed a bug before it became a crisis. The foreman in the rain. He showed the graphs last. He told the truth first. The board approved another 6 months of funding with little debate. A director who had voted no the first time met him at the door and said, simply, "I was wrong. Thank you for proving it before we paid the full price." On the anniversary of the night the folder fell, Daniel arrived early to straighten chairs and wipe fingerprints from the glass. Old habits are a kind of prayer. In a bin, he found a printed deck covered in red ink. He smiled and left it there. Some things belong in the bin. At 9, the operating committee gathered. Charles glanced at Daniel. "Open us," he said. Daniel looked around the table at faces that had once smirked and now listened. "Before we talk numbers," he said, "I want to remember what we almost lost. We stared at our reflection so long we forgot there was a window next to the mirror. We talked to ourselves so loudly we couldn't hear the person on the line asking for a part, not a gift card. We aren't who we were. We aren't who we will be. But we are a little more honest, a little braver, and a lot more useful." He paused. "A year ago, I was told to leave this room because I didn't belong. I'm standing here because an idea refused to go quietly into a trash bag. If you're the person with the idea, don't wait for permission. Write it down. Slide it under the door if you have to. If you're the person at the table, look toward the door and ask who is standing on the other side, holding something you need." He closed the laptop. No flourish. No anthem. Just a room full of people who understood they had work to do and finally wanted to do it. When they filed out, Daniel stood alone a moment longer and watched rain stripe the glass in steady lines. Darius leaned into the doorway. "You done saving the world for the day?" For the hour, Daniel said, "Good." Darius grinned. "Because there's a kid in the lobby selling fundraiser chocolate who's about to hustle you out of $10. They walked together. Ordinary felt like a luxury. On the ground floor, the lobby wall of photographs had a new frame. Gloria laughing with grease on her cheek. Priya pointing at a chart. Charles with sleeves rolled. Daniel mid-clap at the edge of the frame as if still not certain he was allowed in the picture. Beneath it, a small brass plate read "Listen down. Build up." Sophia stood in front of it and took a photo on her phone. "It's good," she said. "It's almost true." "Almost as a start," he said. Outside, the rain softened into a mist that made the city shine. Daniel lifted his face to it and felt what he had felt the night the folder fell. The weight and wonder of what happens when one person refuses to accept that silence is the price of admission. Then he turned, not to the camera, not to applause, but to you. The you hearing the story on a phone between bus stops, or at a sink after a long shift, or in a parked car outside a building with a door that never seems to open. If this moved you, don't just nod and scroll. Take your idea, however rough, and write it down. Share it with one person who can help. Speak up in the next meeting, even if your voice shakes. And if you're the person at the table, make a space, slide a chair, ask a better question. The company you save might be your own. The family you steady might be waiting for you to clear a path. The future you want is listening. Say it plain.